welcome to the Women's Fitness and Health Revolution podcast. Kinsey here, and I am so excited to be back on the mic and a chit-chatting with all of you. This beginning of the podcast may be a little bit dangerous because I forgot to write an intro, so we are just going ham over here. I also am sitting in a rolly chair, which I don't normally do, and that could go in some kind of direction, so I'm just gonna try to pretend like I'm chill. I use chairs. Anyway, did I mention we're off to a good start? Oops, there. I don't know if you could hear that. Off to a good start. Anywho, life updates. Gosh, last podcast, I mentioned that I had some weird allergy thing. Nope, just turns out it was a summer cold. I accidentally forgot to practice what I preach and did a little bit of overexertion with the back-to-back races. But you know what? We're pretty much on the up and up now. I did my first workout back, and it was humbling, but I'm glad to be back. I also have a workout buddy. Shout out to Carly. She was a client of mine for a while, and now we work out together. And it's just, it really reminds me when I experience things that I talk about where I'm like, oh yeah, I'm not just like talking out my butt. Having someone to work out with, man, oh man, it makes a big difference because I was in no kind of mood to go do an 8 a.m. leg day. So thank you to Carly for getting my workout in. Hello to all of you. Today's topic, I thought it'd be kind of fun because I've done a podcast before on whether to start with nutrition or workouts, but people always ask me like, what's the most important? Like nutrition, exercise, supplements, da-da-da-da. And so I was like, you know what? I'm just going to do my humble opinion on the top 5 most important things we can do for our health at any age. But it gets more and more important as, I always say that margin of error gets a little bit smaller as we get older. We don't recover quite as well. We don't bounce back from things. We get injured a little easier. So more and more important as we age. But again, these are important at every age. And they're going to be 1 through 5, 1 being the most important and 5 being incredibly important, but what I truly think maybe should come after we get the other 4 a little nailed down. And we don't have to do one at a time because each one of these categories, you know me, if something looks and presents itself as a quick fix, giddy up on out of there, y'all. 30-day programs, cleanses, detoxes, whatever, 10 pounds in 10 days, like frickin' run the other way. Those things are marketing. They are not how we get lifelong health. And there's just a whole slew of issues that go along with them. So all of these 5 hierarchical, I should have chosen another word. All 5 of these are going to be things that we're really going to be tweaking and working on over a lifetime. But in terms of what to prioritize, I think it'll be a little surprising to you. You don't have to wait to get to number 5 until you've perfected 1, 2, 3, and 4, but do keep them in the back of your mind. For example, if you wake up on a day, well, we'll talk about it a little later. When you're making your day-to-day choices, play this hierarchy over in your mind and decide what is the most important in this moment. Because life is flexible, right? What's that whole thing? We make a plan and then the universe laughs. It's great to have a plan. I love that. I'd rather have you go with a plan if that keeps you on track with doing the things you want to do and moving and grooving your body, but also being able to accept that maybe sometimes we don't sleep well, or we have a little one who woke us up, or we're in perimenopause and are waking up multiple times a night with hot flashes. So this is going to be my pitch for you to run down every time you're like, shoot, well, what should I be doing today? The 5 top priorities in our health. And like I said, I forgot to write my intro, so I'm just going to dive right in. Maybe this can be refreshing for those of you who are like, just get after it, Kinsey. Oh, I do have to say, because small business, hello, I am still taking applications for my ladies in the Twin Cities for our small group personal training cohorts for Fit After 40. So if you are feeling kind of stumped on getting started, if you used to work out and it's just been a minute, if you've never worked out, if you're this is truly a program that's designed to help you build a foundation so that you can do exactly what I was just talking about, which is have that nice slow burn over your lifetime of optimizing our health, our brain health, our body health as we age and beyond. So Reach out if you're interested. Small group personal training, the attention of personal training, but with the fun of having a group, no more than 6 people. So you still get that personalized programming and attention to form. Okie dokie, team. Let's dive in. So number 1, drum roll. That was a really good drum roll. I have a feeling a lot of you are going to be like, I know what she's going to say. It's going to be strength training. And you're right. That's important, but that is not, to me, the number 1 most important thing. I know normally the countdown goes 5 to 1, but I just think this is more fun. The number 1 most important thing to me when it comes to the hierarchy of our health is sleep. Sleep, 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 okay? The days of burning candle at both ends has to be over if we want to live a healthy, productive life, especially as we enter into that perimenopause transition and beyond. The journey towards better health is truly won and lost on the battlefield of sleep. How's that for dramatic, right? But seriously, I know, but it is 100% true. I see it repeated time and time again in literature surrounding healthy aging. Every podcast I listen to, every paper I read, every research, that's research paper, that should go without. Everyone mentions the importance of prioritizing sleep and how few of us pay attention to sleep hygiene. We just live in a world that doesn't support sleep hygiene. Between having this ethos as a culture that you go, and then you burn out, all the way to the environment we live in. The blue lights all around us, falling asleep with our laptop in our bed or being on our phone. It's the little blinky lights from all the devices in our room. We really are not optimized for sleep health anymore. And it's just something that every year gets a little bit worse and worse. And I hear about it a lot now because I'm in that space. But I don't think correct me if I'm wrong. I would love if it's a little bit more spoken about, but when I sit down with clients and I ask them how their sleep is, it's just kind of like, yeah, whatever, like, I'm busy. Like, that doesn't even like what, but I haven't been exercising, and it's like, it's just skip on to the next. Like, I don't know if it's something that we really are talking about outside of this tiny little beautiful bubble of helping the world get healthier. So it is number 1. It's just number 1. Like I said, I see it time and again. I hear about it all the time. And now I feel it. I feel the consequences of my sleepless nights. Every year I get older, it hits a little harder. I mean, yikes, y'all. When I was in my 20s, I would be out in the clubs till 3 a.m. I'd show up at my gym at 4 a.m. I'd pass out on the couch in the back and wake up at 5 a.m. and run a studio. And the craziest part of that was that it did not even occur to me that was insane or detrimental. I was like, yeah. It just didn't dawn on me that there was another place to be. I mean, what else was I supposed to do, right? I co-owned a gym at that point in my life, but this is a whole other conversation, was working for Sweat Equity. So I was not really getting paid for the ownership. So I was living in LA at the time. So I had to have multiple jobs. I was also a full-time nanny. I was still a working actor. I had jobs at comedy theaters, coffee shops. I helped a woman sell crystals at a flea market and to high-end buyers. Like, I did all the things. And at the same time, I was a single gal who was trying to find time with her friends and maybe date a human. So it was only natural to me that my days would have to be 20 to 23 hours long, right? Just thinking about that now, like, actually makes me so exhausted that I feel like I should just kind of turn off the mic and take a retroactive sleepy pie. By the way, I still can't nap. I've talked about Yoga Nidra, but the point is, yikes, y'all, that's crazy. And it just is not my life now. And why? Why does my body react so viscerally now when it was such a no-brainer before? Because without sleep, our body literally can support nothing else health-wise. And I didn't write about this, but it was kind of an aha moment hugely when the pandemic hit. That was really the first thing to interrupt this pattern for me. I had gotten sober before the pandemic hit, so it wasn't like the party girl woo-woo days, but I was full-time running the gym. I had committed fully to clients. I was in school because I wanted to be the best trainer I could be. So I was taking college courses. I was in an anatomy course, so every night I was studying and doing homework and prepping for tests. And on my one day off, I was volunteering at Cedars-Sinai, and it was 7 days a week. Literally, when Marcus and I first started dating, I probably have talked about this before, he would come over to my house and he would cook dinner with me and we'd eat, and he would sit by me while I studied till 11, and then he would wake up in the morning, come with me to the gym, and vacuum at 5 a.m. because that's how he could hang out, and that's how I knew we were meant to be. Don't worry, I don't make him do that anymore. He wouldn't if I asked. But the point is that my life was totally still so nuts, and then the pandemic hit and everything shut down, and none of those things were available to me other than I could still teach classes, but I didn't have any excuse to be going. And I started getting sleep at 30 for the first time in my life. And I remember a couple weeks into the pandemic being like, why do I feel so good? Why do I feel so happy? Where's my anxiety? Why is my hair staying in my head? I'm not losing it anymore. Holy cow, are those muscles, my body, my physiology, my life just changed, and it hit me like a ton of bricks that it was because I was getting sleep. And I am not even that, I'm not that unique of a case. There are all of my friends in LA. That was the other thing. Were in similar boats. They were doing just as much. They were writers and actors and had day jobs and had just full lives. So it's just, like I said, we live in a society that just normalizes more and rewards more. And man, it was really hard for me to accept that I had to find balance with that. And anyway, the point is that all too often I meet with women who are in the same boat where they're doing all the things, right? They're training 3 to 5 times a week. They're eating in a nutritionally supportive way. They're getting their movement in throughout the day. They're walking, and yet they still feel really stuck with body comp goals, and they feel freaking tired all the time. And why would that be? Peep the sleep, baby. It's almost always that myself and the women that I'm talking to, we're getting 6 hours or less of sleep, or we're maybe in bed for 6 to 9 hours, but they just get so many interruptions throughout the night that when all said and done, really how much REM or deep sleep are you getting? The CDC estimates that roughly 1 in 3 adults are getting less than 7 hours of sleep, which puts them in that sleep deprived category, which means that approximately 30% of our population is sleep deprived. And honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if it was higher. I didn't really even find stats. I could probably deep dive a little more on the split between women and men, because I imagine it skews higher with women, especially given how easily the men I know fall asleep. Although my dad has sleep issues too, so not throwing them any shade. But not to mention, our sleep naturally changes also while we age, right? We're up more in the middle of the night. We get less hours of REM and deep sleep. Like I mentioned at the top, perimenopause can keep us up due to hot flushes. So there's just a lot of things that can get in the way of our sleep as we age. Maybe we could do all the things and knock out as kids, but now that we're in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, and beyond, suddenly we're sleeping like trash. So why does it even matter? I mean, I told you about my own experience, but like why in the grand scheme of things why is this my number one? Well, let's just start with the impairment of cognitive ability. So the executive functions of our brain, whether it's memory, motor skills, all those big ones that it takes to be a functioning human being. There are statistics that compare being underslept to being intoxicated. After approximately 18 hours of being awake, the effects on reaction time, vigilance, multitasking, and hand-eye coordination are comparable to having a blood alcohol content of 0.05%. After 20 hours of being awake, drowsy drivers are impaired on a level that is equitable to 0.08 blood alcohol content, which is the current legal limit in most states. After 24 hours awake, impairment is equivalent to a blood alcohol content of 0.1. So you're just straight up sleep drunk, my friends. Not like a cute sleep drunk puppy, but like a scary behind the wheel sleep drunk. Now, imagine getting night after night of limited sleep or insomnia and the cognitive toll that would take over time on your brain, right? Not only is it literally dangerous to be behind a wheel, one study suggests alone that drowsy driving is involved in approximately 21% of fatal accidents yearly. So that's pretty crazy. But it makes other tasks dependent on coordination and motor skills not just hard to fathom doing, like who even wants to do anything when you're tired, but it makes them dangerous, right? Remember, at its core, that resistance training, when we're talking about strength especially, or just any kind of training when you're doing resistance training for the most part, except for hypertrophy, resistance training is a neurological response. We're creating neuromuscular control, so that brain to muscle connection. So it can be incredibly dangerous to get into heavier lifts or find yourself under a barbell or heavier dumbbells when you're sleep deprived. That margin of error for injury gets way smaller. So in a way, I guess I am saying that this is where I'm saying you can use this hierarchy day to day. If you have a morning where you're like, man, I got no sleep, or like a couple hours, or like I was on and off all night, maybe rethink your workout, right? I know it can be scary to think of skipping, so maybe you don't have to skip completely. We'll talk in a second, some options that I have. But be okay with not doing heavy front squats, right? I don't want you throwing out your back because your leg day is on the books and you're going to do it one way or the other, because it's a safety concern. It literally is, you're lifting drunk, and I do not want you getting injured for so many reasons. So some of the workarounds I've used in the past, because I have had chronic sleep issues in my life, especially now that I'm aware of how important sleep is, especially to motor control. I've used machine-based workouts. Those are really excellent because they're far more supportive. You're not compounding movements like a squat. It's a multi-joint compound movement. So you have to brace your core and you have to hinge at your hips, and there has to be the right flexion in the knee and the ankle joint. But if you're doing a leg press, you're seated. If you're tucking and bracing through your core, it's pretty safe to perform a leg press. You can feel if it's getting into a zone that's not really great for you, and you can adjust really easily. It's just significantly safer. It's not 100% safer, but it is significantly safer. Other things that I've done in the past is I've worked with a trainer and had them just eyeball my form. I've gone lighter. I've done body weight workouts. Again, doesn't completely diminish the risk of injury. You can injure yourself body weight, but it does lower it significantly. And there have been phases of longer, just like sleep disturbances, where I've worked in yoga, and I've been okay trusting that my fitness is a cyclical thing. And maybe last week when I was sick, I didn't work out at all. Not at all. 5 days of no workout. And you know what? It was okay. I actually was like, wow, I'm looking pretty snatched. The point is, though, first thing to check when you're going into your workout, how did I sleep? So let's keep talking about how sleep affects all the things. This is going to be the one that I spend the most time on, because again, I haven't talked too much about it on this podcast, and I just don't know how frequently it gets talked about. But when we're talking in terms of not seeing results from doing the most, when you're exercising, you're eating, all the things, sleep disturbance majorly interrupts the functioning of our hormones. So think of that when we're going through perimenopause too, where we're already seeing all this hormonal roller coaster, right? I don't want to say crazy. It's totally natural, but we're already in a hormonal flux, right? Compound that with not sleeping, and now our hormones are just all over the board. So this can include things like dysregulating our metabolism by wreaking havoc on our gut health, which plays a huge part in our sleep. That's where the majority of our melatonin is created. It also plays a huge part in our immune system. And it also can dysregulate our hunger hormones, leptin and gremlin. Just kidding. It's ghrelin, but I always call it gremlin. And honestly, I think we should do ourselves a favor and just recall it gremlin. That's the one that makes you hungry. And every time I say it, do you remember that movie Gremlins? Anyway, we're back. But it dysregulates those hunger hormones. Not to mention, when we're hungry, the last thing we probably gravitate to, at least I certainly don't, and it's recorded time and time again that this is not the natural thing to gravitate to, are veggies and meat, right? We're going towards those like high reward snacks and treats because that's how our body is hardwired to go for that shiny berry, which gives us energy. In a study performed by the New York Obesity Nutrition Research Center at St. Luke's Roosevelt Hospital Center, after just two consecutive nights of 4-hour sleeps, test subjects had a 28% higher ghrelin or hunger hormone level, and an 18% lower leptin or satiety hormone level in their blood compared to subjects who had spent 10 hours a night in bed. First of all, 10 hours is a long time, but the point here is I would say that you can get an idea that it's not just like we're feeling hungry because we're tired. It is actually changing the amount of hormone in our blood. So it's changing our hormone levels. That's pretty darn significant. In that same study, for those who were sleep deprived, self-reported hunger and appetite ratings significantly increased by upwards of 24%. The greatest increase in that appetite rating, so when they said that they were more hungry when they were sleep deprived, was they had an appetite for those energy-dense, high-carbohydrate foods, which again makes sense that we feel hungrier in general because, again, our biological response when we're tired is to search for energy. And what is energy made out of? Ding, 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 ding. It's food. So food's not a bad thing. Food is fuel. So, of course, our body's going to be searching for it. Another study tested women by reducing their nightly sleep. This I liked because it was a little bit like, listen, I've slept 10 hours before. It was glorious. That is not a norm. This one reduced nightly sleep from 7 to 4 hours over the course of 4 nights. During the sleep deprivation phase, women ate an average of about 400 more calories than they had at the beginning of the session. And some of them even gained weight over the course of this short study. Could just be water weight from carbohydrates. So like, let's ignore the weight part, but it was just an interesting sort of fact to toss in. One of the big takeaways, again, for me in these studies is, yeah, it freaking sucks when you're working really hard. You're busy. You've got a lot going on. You're still making the time to show up for your workouts. Maybe you're meal prepping. Maybe you're just being really conscious about eating and it's taking a lot of your brain power and it's sabotaging your health goals. But even more important is, to me at least, considering that it doesn't take missing a full night of sleep to fall victim to these biological pitfalls of the sleep-related hormonal imbalances. Both of these studies, they didn't look at all-nighters, right? They were looking at 4 to 6 hour sleep windows. And that's a very common sleep window. When we slice it that way, I think a lot of us are more sleep deprived than we realize. And it's personally, again, just anecdotally, was one of the major reasons I had to leave my last job. I loved so much about my last job, but at least 2 nights a week, and oftentimes it was 3, I had 3 a.m. wake-ups and could only at best get 5 hours of sleep, and my health really took the hit. I'm not going to go into it, but if you listened to the podcast before, went through a little thing in the beginning of the year that was a real pain in the tushy. So to say nothing of those this is to say nothing of those who have to work overnight shifts. That's a whole other category. And honestly, I don't feel qualified enough and we don't have enough time on this podcast. If you want me to get a little more research into that, hit me up and I will get you research from people who are experts, but it does take a whole other toll of its own on our hormones. Another hormone that sleep deprivation also dysregulates is cortisol, which we know and love. Again, not a bad thing. We need cortisol. Cortisol should be our wakey, eggs and bakey hormone and then decrease throughout the day. But with lack of sleep, cortisol elevates during hours where it should be tamping down. And in terms of body comp, elevated cortisol can signal the body to store more fat, particularly in the abdominal area. And it can cause us to break down muscle tissue to get that energy our body needs so badly. So yowza, just a double whammy, right? Keeping with hormones, insulin, oofta. I told y'all that this affected like all of the things, right? One study at Columbia, and again, insulin, when we are healthier metabolically, we are sensitive to insulin. When we are pre-diabetic, diabetes type 2, we have insulin resistance. So our body isn't able to use insulin as well. One study that's like way oversimplification. One study at Columbia University found that shortening sleep by just 90 minutes for 6 weeks increased insulin resistance in women who were accustomed to getting adequate sleep. So women who were sleeping really well, they took away just 90 minutes and they became more insulin resistant. The effect was even more pronounced in postmenopausal women, which put them at a higher risk of type 2 diabetes, which again is already a risk that starts to increase as we enter perimenopause and start to lose estrogen, because estrogen plays a big role in helping us remain insulin sensitive. The same paper, I will link or put a link to the article in the show notes. It's a quick read. Goes on to state that the risk of type 2 diabetes is also increased for folks with irregular sleep patterns, suggesting that research shows that a consistent sleep schedule is as important as the amount of sleep. And I have also heard this a lot, and I hear it and I'm just like, must be nice. So this is one of those things where it's like when they talk about how plastics are in everything and they're like, you can't use water, you can't touch your floor, you can't buy groceries unless you know, whatever. And all fair things. Little changes make big differences. I'm not anti that. I wish I could do it all, but I simply cannot, right? So I pick and choose my battles. Right now, for me, my goal is to get sleep when I can get it. I'm still working one shift a week where I'm up at 3 a.m. And you know what? Instead of stressing about not getting consistent sleep, I am going to thank my lucky stars that the other 6 days a week, I have the potential of hitting that 8-hour window. But it is something that if you're pretty good at sleeping, it is one way to level up, and just information is power. I am not an expert on circadian rhythm or sleep cycles or a sleep expert. So I'm also going to include in the show notes two of who I believe are two of the most trusted sources that I go to for these things. Dr. Panda is, like, for me, the OG circadian rhythm expert. He was the first voice I ever heard on it. And it was this really cool podcast where he was talking about how each of our organs have their own unique circadian rhythm. They were talking about like Anyway, point is, he's a genius. He's amazing. He's been out there in the world preaching this for a long time. He's awesome. And then Sean Stevenson, who is the voice of the Model Health show. Love him. He's a delight to listen to. Great resource. 10 out of 10 recommend. He's got the career that I would definitely go into if I did college again. He's a nutrigenomics, how nutrition affects genes. What? Anyway, he is an expert in optimizing sleep as well as nutrition. So definitely check him out as well, especially if you struggle with sleep. It is so important. I cannot stress it enough. This topic has gained major steam in the last 6 years. Like I said, I don't know how much outside of this little bubble, but in this bubble, it was not as talked about as it is now. So I love that. Point being, there's lots of other sources out there for you to look into. As always, vet your sources. Just do a little homework before blindly following, because there's also a lot of people trying to sell you shiznat. Ain't nobody got time for that. So there it is. Sleep may not be like the sexiest thing, or maybe you're really into it, but it is my number one thing on the hierarchy of health. Without sleep, there's nothing else that can fall into place. And I'm sorry, y'all. Unfortunately, it's not a quick fix, right? But more likely than not, it is the number one priority that a lot of us have to follow on or focus on. Okay, numero dos on our hierarchy is kind of similar but different. Stress. Is that a fun sound for the mic? Lack of stress management can sabotage health goals in many of the ways that lack of sleep can. My off the cuff 10-cent guess would be they both lead to a lot of systemic inflammation. Obviously, there's other things at play, but that would just be my that's probably a part of it. Like sleep deprivation, stress also affects our hormone regulation, especially when we look at cortisol, because it is tied to stress responses, that fight or flight, along with epinephrine. And it also can trigger cravings. It can lead to serious depression. All of these things can lead to unhealthy behaviors which sabotage our overall health. Things like a sedentary lifestyle, because I don't know about you, when I get really anxious, I just kind of get sleepy. Smoking, really anything. I used to smoke a lot of weed. That is no longer a part of my life. There is no shame in the game. But again, just educate yourself about the pros and cons of medicinal marijuana, because especially in perimenopause, there's some research that can show that it can be less than beneficial. Again, your body, your choice. I love this for you if you found that it's really been helpful for you. So no shade in the game. I think we can all agree upon smoking cigarettes is truly awful for our health. And again, this is said with all love and no judgment. I was a smoker before I got sober. I smoked a lot. I am so grateful that I don't smoke. It was the hardest thing I've ever had to quit. And I just thank my lucky stars all the time. I don't think about alcohol anymore, but I think about cigarettes. I'm sure I've shared that before. I understand that is a hard thing to quit. But the slew of health issues that it has for us, especially for women, it causes premature menopause, which leads to increased risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancers, just literally all the things. It's such an evil thing. And again, I do not say that with shade. I say that from just I couldn't do it. I couldn't quit it. And man, like I said, it was just like some miracle of the universe that when I stopped drinking, I just didn't pick up cigarettes, and thank goodness. But if you need help with that, they do have programs. There is a Nicotine's Anonymous, just like there is an Alcohol Anonymous. There's groups for it. Please treat it like alcoholism, because it is an addiction. Like I said, that's harder than anything. And you're so worth it. And I know it's really tied into stress, right? Like we get stressed, we smoke a cigarette. And so it becomes that snake eating its tail, which we'll talk about again. But if you are a smoker, I would put quit smoking at the top of your list. And if you don't quit smoking, that's okay too. Like I said, there's no judgment, just knowledge is power, and you deserve the best, most healthiest life. But other habits that it can increase when we're stressed, it can increase alcohol consumption. Probably we'll end up doing a pod in the future about alcohol consumption and perimenopause, because it's not great. It can lead to binge eating, just all those habits, those self-soothing habits, right? We're looking for coping mechanisms when we don't have stress management. And of course we are. There's absolutely no judgment. We should want to soothe. We deserve to be soothed. But if we don't have tools, we're going to grab for what we're naturally have around us and what we know. So that alone can really sabotage health on a whole other level, right? It also suppresses our immune system and makes us more susceptible to chronic illness and cancers, especially considering that systemic inflammation. According to the National Cancer Institute, research has shown that people who experience chronic stress, right over here, can have digestive problems. Yep. Heart disease, high blood pressure, weakened immune system. They also are more prone to having headaches, sleep trouble, difficulty concentrating, depression, anxiety, and getting over viral infections, including the viruses that included COVID-19. Stress can also lead to muscle catabolism. I think that's the right word, or AKA breakdown. So it'll break down our muscles when we're in that stress state. Again, thinking back to when we were talking about cortisol. So again, you could be working so hard. You could be doing all the things. And for some reason, you're just not seeing the results that you feel like you should. And at times you might even be seeing things going in a direction where you're like, why? Why is this particular thing getting worse? Whether it's body comp or energy or whatever the case may be. But it's crazy then, because we can get even more stressed because it's frustrating. It's frustrating to be doing the things and not getting what you deserve. And back to that topic of stress being the snake eating its own tail. I've talked a lot about it, but exercise is a stressor. Nutritional deficits are definitely a stressor. Again, why workouts are number 5, right? A lot of times people see stagnance in their process or in their progress, or they maybe even see a little bit of weight gain. And instead of thinking, I need to pull back and figure out some stress management, recover, give my body a little break, TLC, they go, well, gosh, I guess I just need to work out more and diet harder. And the result leads to even more resistance to weight loss or body recomping. And round they go, doing more and eating less, and they're destroying their bodies. And I don't want to say even worse, but equally as bad, they're destroying their self-esteem, right? They're blaming themselves for lack of discipline. And we in the fitness industry are to blame for this. I've done a lot of talking about this in the past, but I'm just going to own up to it for all of us, because for a long time, and even now included, the more is better, the no pain, no gain, the grind set, all of that has been instilled, like just drilled into our brains. Just the amount of people who I still talk to who are like, I eat 1,200 calories. Do you think I should do less? I saw a really fun meme the other day that was like, yo, 1,200 calories are what toddlers eat. So do more, sis. I don't know. I think it's equal parts. We just didn't know any better. I think the fitness community early on was very different than it is now. I think now we're understanding fitness is something that is a lifestyle. It's something that is preventative healthcare, that it's not just like gym bros and tiny little ladies. It's like actually something that is deeply necessary to helping us age optimally. And originally, I think it was just seen as this very small group. And it was just that grind set mentality. So I think part of it was that we were just wrong about what fitness was. We were just wrong about it. And then, of course, the insidious part is that it was used to sell things. And the best way to sell something to someone is to make them feel bad enough about themselves and then tell them that you have the solution. So anyway, wow, did I go on a tangent? But anywho, dilly, the point is, you are not undisciplined. Probably what's going on is that your poor body is just feeling so much stress. So please do your best to be honest about the amount of stress you have, because we definitely have it, and that's okay. That's life. You aren't weak. It's not because you can't hack it or you're a failure because you have to take things off your plate for right now. Life is just so full with both incredibly heartbreaking things, and also really beautiful things, wonderful things, the things that life is worth living for, right? We can love something and it can still be a stress, right? We can love our jobs. We can love our children. We can love our partner. We can love our family. We can love our workouts. But that doesn't mean that there isn't a physical or an emotional toll that comes from them once in a while, sometimes more often. And that's okay. The sooner we can realize the role that stress plays in our lives and find habits to counteract it, the sooner we're going to be on the path to a healthy, optimized life that we love and that we deserve. So sleep, stress, those are definitely the ones I'm spending the most time on, because like I said, they just are game changers. You could do all the other things I'm about to talk about, but if those two things are just sort of pushed to the side, it's going to be, it's going to be an uphill battle, my friends, and you just deserve peace. That's the other thing. When we start to really break down and find tools for stress, like I now have a toolbox that's getting pretty full of tools for my stress management, because I hit rock bottom. I absolutely needed to figure out another way to live. And I hope that doesn't happen to you. I hope you are able to find an easier, softer way, because you know it's best for you. And stress management can really be anything, right? It can literally be doing an inventory of your life and taking things off your plate. It could be meditating. Doesn't work for everyone. Sort of just works a little bit for me, but I like it enough that I keep it in. It could be moving more in a gentle way, going for gentle walks. It could be having someone that you're able to talk to who listens. It could be paying attention to the people we surround ourselves with. There's a really good book called Chatter that's worth checking out. One of the things that I really like in that book, again, we're riffing, so sorry if I wax on. One of the things that I really liked about in that book when they were talking about people we're surrounding ourselves with is the importance of surrounding yourself with people who don't just soundboard what you're saying. So like if you're in a really negative place, which we all are in, instead of just going to a person who is going to be like, you're like, oh, this person at work, they're just the worst. And maybe they are the worst, right? Instead of a person who goes, yeah, they are the worst. And you know what you said about that really does suck. And, just sort of like creates this sort of black hole of pain. Having people who hear it and go, I hear you. That sounds really frustrating. Maybe they just hold space for you, and maybe they help you find solutions. So yeah, that's really frustrating. What can you do about it? Can you talk to your supervisor? Can you set a boundary? Is this job worth staying? Maybe not even that big of a deal, but I thought that was I really took that to heart, because I think as someone who, when I'm there for people, my go-to reaction is to mirror what they're saying to me and kind of like hype them up. And that works really great when we're on the positive side of things, right? But I do think that when people come to me now, I try to be a little bit more of a listener. And then if they are looking for a solution, someone who helps with solutions. But that's just one thing. That again, like the people who are around us are a huge either stress reliever or a stress causer. So anyway, again, let's just cap it at that for now. There's lots of things we can do. Choose one little thing. It's like exercise, right? Don't do it all at once. Just do one little thing, whatever that is today. Okay. Next up, number 3 on the hierarchy of health. I am going to go with nutrition. I already spoiled that I wasn't strength training, so don't get it twisted. Movement is huge, but if we're honest, we probably be eating more than we be working out. I hope so, right? Like I hope we're eating more often than we're working out. Not to mention, we're really kind of throwing away our workouts when we don't support them nutritionally. Today is a lot of hyperboles, but I feel like they're kind of more truth bomb hyperboles. If you're not eating to support your nutrition, again, this is another thing that I've seen with over the years, clients who are feeling really confused on certain goals they're working on. Building muscle is a big one, right? Like they really want to build muscle, but they're afraid to eat more, and then they get really frustrated. I actually had a client who we did an in-body scan, and they put themselves in a deficit. I don't, that's not my thing. And no judgment. They did their thing. Here for them. They were feeling really good. They were feeling better. And I was like, oh, great. That's amazing. I'm really happy for you. They got on the scale on the in-body, and their body fat percentage had actually gone up. And in-body scans, whole different thing. Like there's so many things that go into it, but it felt very important as a piece of data to show that person that the way forward isn't through starvation, right? Our bodies need to eat. And that's another thing that straight up is diet culture. That is just insidious. Buy this to fix yourself marketing. That is ugly and dangerous. That has taught us for decades that the way to being our best self is by eating less. And that just couldn't be the case. So if we are working out, doing the things, and we are not feeding our body, even if we're not working out and we're not feeding our body, it goes to hell in a handbasket real fast. Because nutrition is supportive, not just for our workouts, but for literally everything we do. Remember that whole fuel in our car thing? If we undereat, or if we aren't prioritizing eating things that are nutritionally dense with that nice juicy food matrix, good levels of protein, great fiber, micronutrients, all the good things, then it affects everything, including our inflammation levels. So hello, more stress on the body. And it can also affect our sleep. So again, food is fuel. I did a whole podcast too, actually, on how to get more protein and how to get more veggies. So protein and fiber. So go ahead and check those out. Veggies that don't suck, BT dubs. If you're like, I don't like veggies, check it out. I promise. Links are in the show notes. Go ahead and listen to those. And guess what? The other big thing is, I already said it, but for a lot of us, we need to eat more. And maybe that just means more nutritionally dense food. We can get a lot of calories in a day. That doesn't necessarily mean we're getting a lot of nutrients in a day. Or we're getting nutrients, but with a lot of empty things that are actually causing more inflammation in our body. So as always, with nutrition, now with diets, I just want to let that word go. Let's just let diet go. With our nutrition, with fueling our body, we prioritize real foods with limited processing. Again, it just makes it easier for our bodies to work with. It doesn't mess with gut issues, which we probably have. I think it's like some crazy statistic, like only 9% of Americans are metabolically healthy. So just the realer they are, the just thumbs to the sky. Doesn't mean we're not ever eating processed food, but 80-20 is a really good way to sort of think about it at first. The foods that are closer to how they would appear in nature are the way to go, with emphasis on protein, looking for that like 0.8 to 1 gram of ideal body pound or ideal pound of body weight. So I'm 136-ish pounds. I'm aiming for roughly 136 grams of protein. That pretty high. Sometimes I hit it. Sometimes I get 100 grams. Sometimes I get 180 grams. So as long as your like average is within that range, that's a great goal to shoot for. And at least 25 grams of high quality fiber. So that's at like 5-1 with carbohydrate to fiber ratio. So if something has 15 carbohydrates and 3 grams of fiber, that's 5-1. If it has 15 grams of carbohydrates and 5 grams of fiber, that's 5-3. Did I do it? 5-3? Okay. Anyway, point is 1-3, 1-3. Wow. Okay. Hello. I'm recording this one in the evening. I never do evening recordings. I can barely math in the daytime. So point is 15 grams of carbs, 5 grams of fiber. That's 3-1. Wow. This is one of those moments where I wish I had an editor for the podcast, but I don't yet. So you're just going to have to shift through it. And we made it. Point is high quality fiber. Another really interesting fact that I learned recently is that the majority of women are under-proteined, but even more so under fiber with quality fiber. So we're getting even less of our fiber intake than we need. Pretty fascinating. 0.8 to 1 grams of ideal pound of body weight for our protein, 25 grams of high quality fiber. That was a journey. Okay, I'm just going to move on because that was rough and I'm literally like sweating over here. Number 4 on our health hierarchy. Well, in my version, my humble opinion. Again, this is a hard one, but I'm sticking to it. I reread it a couple times and I agree with past Kinsey. Number 4, most important thing is movement throughout your day. And I know it is weird that as a fitness professional, the fact that weight training is number 5, kind of nuts. But that must just mean that these other things are pretty dang important, right? So why movement throughout the day? Similar to the reasons that nutrition tracked so much higher, when we work out, we're building and maintaining muscle, which is huge, obviously, right? But at most, that's like 5 hours out of our week, which means that we could spend the other 107 waking hours of our day sedentary, and those 5 hours would mean pretty much nothing, right? If we spent, that's assuming that we're sleeping 8 hours a night, 107 other hours in the day. If we're not doing anything, 5 hours. I tried to do math with very small numbers. I'm not going to do math right here, but you can tell it kind of diminishes the returns on your workouts. I said hyperbole today. We've all heard that sitting is the new smoking. Maybe you haven't heard it. Now you have. Sitting is the new smoking. And unfortunately, with rising rates of obesity, even in children, that is kind of the truth. That is not a hyperbole. I've done a couple podcasts too on the importance of NEAT, or non-exercise activity thermogenesis, aka the movement we do in our day-to-day, which is not exercise, which is responsible for up to 30% of our total daily energy expenditure and is also incredibly crucial to the health of our skeleton. So as we age, especially when we're thinking about mobility issues, fall risks, osteoporosis, joint and ligament pain, this is incredibly important that we move our body. The more we sit, the more pain we feel. I've also done at least one podcast that I could think of off the top of my head that talks about the benefit of walking. This technically counts as a NEAT activity. Other NEAT activities include standing, brushing our teeth, fidgeting, active rest positions like I'm doing right now, where I'm sitting on the edge of the chair and not using my backrest to just sort of like offload my weight. I'm using my core and my spine to hold myself upright. The average American gets roughly around 3,500 steps every day. I mean, shoot, when I was managing a gym and when I first started managing this most recent gym, I had my Fitbit and I stood all day. So like that's great or whatever, but I was only averaging like 4,500 steps a day, which was crazy because this gym, I don't have to walk around and re-rack weights. Man, when I first got my Fitbit, I was at John Reed and part of my jobs was re-racking weights in this giant gym. I was getting like 25 to 30K, baby. Anyway, you don't have to go crazy either. Don't go crazy. There's a whole other conversation that has to do with that. So let's just say, get back on track, Kinsey. The point is, I was not getting a lot of steps and I was in a gym. However, studies have shown that increasing your steps to just 7,000 steps a day, so not even that like arbitrary 10,000, just to 7,000 steps from that average American step count, it can decrease your chances of all-cause morbidity significantly. So I did, like I said, go more into depth on this one in a podcast about under-desk treadmills because they were like all the rage last year. I don't know if you saw that, but like everyone had one and every single ad was about an under-desk treadmill. So I gave my hot take, and spoiler, I like it. I like moving throughout the day. So I definitely recommend giving that a listen. That was back in the day when my podcasts were still kind of short. I think that one's like 15 minutes, maybe 20. Does walking and NEAT build muscle or help increase bone density? The short answer is no, unfortunately, not for trained individuals. If you're sedentary, it certainly can help, right? But if you're working out, that's not the purpose of it. But again, it is important in literally every other respect physiologically, from cardiovascular health to skeletal health to metabolic regulation, all of it. So move your body throughout your day. Those podcasts that I'm talking about too, that you can find in the show notes, will also offer ways to increase your movement throughout the day. And if you'd like me to do you know the deal. If there's other things you want me to talk about, hit me up, kinsey.diamond@gmail.com or Instagram, kinsey.does.the.fitness. I for realsy, I'm going to do a question episode soon, so get those cues in. Okay, we're here. Number 5, our final number in the top 5 of our hierarchy of health a la Kinsey. Weight training. We made it. And again, and this is a big again, just because it's number 5 does not mean that I want you to feel free to skip it or put it off for a while. Because again, all 5 of these are not just boxes to check and then move on to the next one. They are going to take your lifetime to maintain and build up over time, so you can work on them all together. But again, if you wake up one day and you slept not at all and you had a heavy lift on the books, use this hierarchy, check it off to see if what you're doing is a safe move. If you got no sleep, change your training program. Okay. Again, the only reason it's down here besides that is a lot of the benefits of weight training, as I mentioned, rely on those other 4 categories being in check. So that's having good sleep, stress regulation, nutrition that supports ourselves, and moving throughout the day. And B, we just do less of it than the other 4, quite significantly. Again, 107 hours of our week if we're training 5 hours a week. So 5 to 107, craziness. But other than that, all the benefits we've talked about on previous podcasts around why building muscle is important and why weight training is a non-negotiable for all humans, they stand. It is absolutely 100% non-negotiable for us as we age to have muscle on our frame. We must have muscle, and the only way that we can build muscle is through lifting weights. I've said it a million times. At first, you're going to be more prone to muscle build because you have newbie gains. You're adapting from going from nothing to something. So that's a beautiful place. But eventually, when we're thinking about fitness as a lifelong journey, you're going to have to pick up weights or you're going to stop building muscle. That's just the way it works. There's a very specific type of training that causes the adaptation of building and maintaining muscle. And this is it, especially for my ladies in peri and beyond, right? And my gents too. We all start to lose muscle after age 30. So it's our body armor. We got to do it. And while it doesn't take up the majority of our life, which is a good thing, right? That's kind of cool that it is actually such a small amount of our investment. It affects the other tiers of the hierarchy when they all start to come together in like a beautiful little ballet. When incorporated responsibly, weight training increases our energy. It enhances our sleep. It can reduce our stress, healthy dopamine rushes, and it can encourage us to think critically about our nutrition. If this is your first visit to the pod, well, hey, I'm absolutely just delighted to have you here. Please check out all the previous episodes. I talk a lot about why we need to be resistance training at least twice a week, especially as we age. So go down a little wormhole, have some fun. I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again just in case you haven't heard it or you tune me out. When we know why we are working out, we are going to be far more likely to stay consistent with it, especially when we know why in terms of like our true health and optimal aging. I don't always want to work out. What? Hello. Like I said, today was a lower body day. I'm an upper body girly, but you know what? I know enough about why it's important that I show up. So I do. I treat it like a doctor appointment. And when I know it's going to be hard for me, I find a way that makes it more helpful, like working out with Carly. This is truly preventative healthcare. When we lift weights, we are taking care of ourselves in the long run. Okay, there we have it. Our 5 levels of our hierarchy of health, our hierarchy of health as Kinsey sees it, as Kinsey doth proclaim. We've got 5, weight training. 4, movement throughout the day. 3, nutrition. 2, stress management. And 1, sleep. Maybe I should have done it in the order. Oh well, too late. Should I go back and edit this in reverse? Honorary mentions for this hierarchy would probably go to mobility and a balance practice, like at least weekly, maybe daily, most likely like 2 or 3 times a week. That is really big, making sure that we are mobilizing, re-lengthening our muscles. Like I said, really just working multi-directions in for spinal health and balance, of course, as we age is super duper important. I'm not talking like 60-minute yoga sessions, although yay if you got the time, but even just like stretching in the morning, right? And then the other one would go to supplements, not in like a crazy over the top. I open my cabinet and there's just like $8,000 worth of a daily supplement, more like our soil is grossly depleted because of monocropping, so we don't get the nutrients we need kind of way. I don't do a daily vitamin. That's not because I don't believe in them. That's just because I'm bad at taking supplements. I do, however, have a couple of daily go-tos that have just stuck. They are affordable. They make sense to me, and I can just sort of take them in one fell swoop. I have my magnesium G, which I take at night. I do vitamin D in the morning. I do creatine. I was doing creatine every day. I want to get back to that because there are a lot of cognitive benefits to it. I just sort of fell off, but something's better than nothing. And one day my goal is to be better at working in an omega-3, but today is not that day, and that's okay. You know, it's all good. It's good to have goals. I had one where it was like a vitamin D, K2, and omega-3 dropper. I'm going to get that. I don't know how good the omega-3 was. That's always the like trick with supplements, which is why, whatever. Point is, practice, not perfection. Please do not hesitate to reach out with any questions about today's episode, or if you have follow-up topics that you would like me to deep dive into. You know I live for your feedback. Like literally when I see, even though I'm not always perfect at responding right away or answering it on the podcast. When I see DMs from you guys, it literally makes my entire life. I live for it. So reach out to me via email, kinsey.diamond@gmail.com, or on Instagram, kinsey.does.the.fitness. Also reach out to me if you're interested in learning more about Fit After 40, our small group personal training cohort, which is going to be in the Twin Cities. I'd love just to sit down on a call with you, learn more about your goals. I always like to throw in that even if you decide working with me is not right for you right now, no hard feelings. I make sure that you leave those calls with strategies that you can implement going into your life, because your health is the most important part and I'm just a resource, right? As always, thank you from the bottom of my heart for listening today. Especially, I feel like recording in the evening, we'll probably not do it again for a while because maybe this was rambly, maybe not. Hopefully you got something out of today. I had a blast, so that's all that matters to me. Just kidding. You getting stuff out of it matters first. Me having a blast, hierarchy. Number 2. Number 3, mobility and supplements. Number 4, sleep. Anyway, if you have a moment, it would, of course, mean the absolute world to me if you would leave a review or comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, anywhere where you're listening to your podcast. It really, I cannot explain enough how much it does for getting this podcast to women who are looking to take care of their beautiful machines in a supportive way that is BS free. I am just a gal standing in front of the world trying to uproot our narrative about fitness and women's health. And the easiest way for me to get into ears is from you sharing it. So I really, really appreciate your time and helping others find this podcast. In the meantime, I am cheering you on, you amazing humans. Take care of your bodies and your brains. You are so stinking worth it. I will tune in with you next week. Aroo.